Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4. This is not the Mississippi. This is how I irrigate when I don't have much water. This is, are we ever done irrigating? This requires patience. And this is how I irrigate when I have a normal amount of water. This is get her done irrigating. Pour the water on, soak the soil, move to the next part of the field. Then move to the next field, keep moving the water and hope the rotation gets you back to start again before things dry out too much. And this is how I switch back and forth between the 2 ways I irrigate. Hi, I'm Paul, and this is The Long Green Line, a program about adaptation, invention, and growing plants. In this series, we're testing an irrigation adapter and growing a garden while we test the adapter. The garden's 2.5 feet wide and 1,000 feet long. It's a long green line. This is episode 2. You may wish to view episode 1 before viewing this episode. In episode 2 today, we're going to take a close look at how I set up the irrigation system, the drip system, and talk about how it's working. Now, I know that some of you probably have a big red word flashing in your mind right now when I start talking about using this drip system. The word that you're seeing in your mind is filtration. You're saying, how is he going to filter this water so that the emitters don't plug up and we have non-drip tape rather than drip tape? Well, we're going to talk about the F word. No, not that F word. This is a family show. In fact, we're going to do a whole episode that's geared toward children later on. And we're going to do an entire episode about how to clean water in this low-tech system for this drip tape. But for now, settle in and let's have a look at how I'm conducting this irrigation with this drip line. So let's talk about how I put the water into the drip tape. I have water delivered to this field by underground pipe, which is of course very nice. And so here's my riser for the water to come up into the gated pipe. So I'll go ahead and open my valve a little bit. Doesn't take very much water for drip irrigation. And now I'm going to let the water go down the pipe and flush out any sediment that might have accumulated from the last irrigation. Let's go down to the end of the pipe and see what's coming out. Okay, I don't know if you can see the water coming out of this gate or not, but you can see it coming out here. So after I flush it just a little while, I'm going to go ahead and close it. I'll close it now because I irrigated just a few days ago and I don't anticipate much sediment in the gated pipe. So we'll let that pipe fill, and let's go on up to the top of the string, and I'll explain a couple of things that I'm doing up there. So you see that I have a short piece of gated pipe here that the gates are upright, and one gate is open. That's to let the air out as this pipe fills. I think I'll go ahead and open the valve a little bit more to speed things up. So this gate is air exhaust to get rid of the air, and this one I'm going to make an adapter so that I can put a pressure gauge in, because I don't really know how much pressure I'm irrigating with. My guess is maybe 2, 3, 4 psi, but I might be wrong. Some of these emitters sometimes they squirt like fountains, so it might be up to 5 or 8 psi. Hopefully I'll get an adapter before the end of the series. So I think I have more water than I need by about 10 times. Let's try that. And so I've got all the air out now. I'll just close the valve. And if we watch our drip tape, we should be able to see drops starting to come out. Here's one here, and you can see the drips starting, the wet area starting to come out. So I think we're pretty good. So let's go on down and see what else is happening on the line. Now let's talk about the drip tape a bit. Drip tape comes in a wide variety of diameters and emitter spacings and wall thicknesses. Today we won't go into the various considerations of choosing a drip tape. We'll simply say that here on the line we're testing a thin walled tape and a thick walled tape. On camera you see the thin walled tape in the foreground and the thick walled tape in the background. And the pieces of tape of red flagging that you see on the ground show where the emitters are. The nearest tape has emitters every 8 inches and the far tape has emitters every 16 inches. The emitter is actually a sophisticated opening in the tape designed to let the water drip out and keep the sediment from clogging at the point where the water drips out. The tape, I laid it in furrows that I had from my furrow irrigation to protect it from the wind, and I put a shovel full of dirt about every 10 paces to keep the tape from blowing away. We've had some pretty strong winds, and so far so good. The wind has not even ruffled the tape. I didn't bury the tape like is often done in drip irrigation because I didn't know if I'd have enough pressure to inflate the tape with the soil on top of it. I think this system is lower pressure than typical used for drip irrigation. And not covering the tape turned out to lead to a little bit of a problem and a concern. When the tape gets hot in the sun, it expands and kinks. I don't think that it would do that if it was covered by the soil. It hasn't been any big problem from the expanding and contracting, but I do find that it's easier to turn the water on in the morning when the tape is contracted and it's cool enough that there's no kinks in the tape. All right, I want to show you how I repair tape. I had one emitter blow out. It was more like a fountain than an emitter, and so I have put a splice in here. I use some tubes that we developed for putting the tape into the drip tape adapter, the same tube I can use for splicing. You see it's not perfect, but it's probably serviceable. And then I use these wires here. These wires are from the concrete industry. It's to hold together rebar tie wires, and so I have used those to twist the tape on. I'm going to put another one on here next to what I already have, and maybe that will help see if we can get the water to stop a little bit. Now I have this nice tool that the rebar people use, and I put it on here and then I pull, and you see how it twists the tape. Pretty slick, huh? Yeah, and that cut down my leak quite a bit. So a fairly fast, simple way to repair leaks. Not perfect, but good enough here on the line. So I want to show you how I closed off the end of the tape. I learned this trick from a friend who does drip irrigation. You see that I have kinked the tape, and then I cut a short length of tape and slipped it over so that I could hold the kink in place. Okay, so that's basically the setup of how I laid out the drip tape and how I use it. Now let's talk a little bit about the actual irrigation. I want to start by talking about the consistency of the water dripping out of the tape for this 1,000 feet. It's not perfect, but it's not too bad. I think what's happening is, typically we would expect that as the water goes down the tape, friction causes it to lose energy, as the engineers would say, which means there's less pressure and the water wouldn't drip out of the tape as fast. I'm seeing some of that. However, I'm also seeing that there is a gradient in this field, and that loss of elevation, decrease in elevation, creates pressure on the water. So that's overcoming the loss of friction and making for it fairly consistent. So we are going to cut to some video clips showing at basically the top of the field, 500 feet and 1,000 feet, and you can judge for yourself on the consistency. As I say, it's not perfect, but compared to what we get in furrow irrigation, it would take me this long of a run, about 36 or 48 hours, to get the water even to the bottom of the field to start soaking. In the meantime, the top of my field would be over wet. So this drip irrigation is a big improvement over in consistency of irrigation. I want to also talk about the water soaking over. As a furrow irrigator, I like to see the water soak from one furrow to the next and have my entire soil profile wet. To my disappointment, that's not happening here. Right in the middle of the furrow, there is the water's never made it across. It's dry, and I have run this tape I ran a 48-hour run, 2 days, and it still didn't soak over. Now it's soaking nicely where next to the tape, and I haven't irrigated for a while, but nonetheless you can see that the soil is nice and moist. I retain some hope that the soil will soak over with time, but I was talking with a friend and that may not happen. I'm disappointed about that because I like to use my entire soil profile and use all the microorganism and the microbiome that is available in the soil. But this is a learning year this year, and we'll see what happens. So as I said, my longest run has been 48 hours, and my shortest run I irrigated for 12 hours to wet some seeds that I had just planted, and that worked really well. The entire 1,000 feet, the seeds and the ground around the seeds got wet, and it should work real well for germination. So that pretty well explains how I'm doing the irrigation. Let's go and see what's happened with the seeds that we planted 2 weeks ago. Let's go look at some plants. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Long Green Line.